Here we are. Welcome everybody. It's Tuesday, the 5th of March, 2024, and this is a webinar with Mathilde Bouquin on raising attainment at GCSE, tackling the receptive skills. This is part one. We're going to have a part two coming up next week with Julien, where he's going to be talking about the speaking and the writing. You can see Julien giving us a little wave there. Okay. So my name is Helen Myers. I'm ALL London Chair. And I'm a member of the Association for Language Learning, as is Julien and other people from the Harris Federation. We're really delighted that it's a federation. They're so supportive of the Association for Language Learning. And I'd love it if in the chat now, anybody who's member of ALL, and I know that Sarah is, she's there as our treasurer, just write in the chat that you're a member and please encourage people to join. That would be great. And if you go to our website, we've got the word join on every page that you can see. So it'd be great if people could join us. Coming soon here, we're here already today with March the 5th. We had Sarah last week, and you'll have a link soon to her session on organising residential visits. And then, as I say, March the 14th, Julian's going to be doing a webinar, and we've got an ALL London June event. That's going to be on June the 15th. And I went to go and look at the Spanish school in Portobello Road last Friday. And I'm really quite excited about the fact that, you know, we've loved using other venues. This is going to be great because we have a nice big venue, but also quite a few classrooms. So we'll be able to organise possibly sessions for different languages. Coming up very soon, I'm going to go off on Thursday for this. We've got our Language World, and I think there may still be tickets left. It's very popular. So if you can get along to Language World, that would be great. Some of you, if you can't manage to get away to stay overnight, and if you're in the Midlands, you'll be able to very easily get there on the 8th, on Saturday. There's the details then about what Julien is going to be doing in his session next week. So it now remains for me to tell you about our speaker. Thank you so much, Mathilde, for offering to do this. I know that you're going to enjoy this. I've seen the PowerPoint. It is incredibly detailed with notes. And thank you so much, Mathilde, for the fact that you have already said to us that you'll be happy to share that PowerPoint as a PDF. And there's going to be a lesson as well that you said that you would share as a PowerPoint. This is really so generous of you to do this and to share things with us. So as we go through, Mathilde has said that she would love this to be as interactive as possible. So please do use the chat to ask any questions. We normally suggest put a Q in front of your question, and that way, as moderators, Sarah and I can be looking through, but Julien, as a colleague of Mathilde, may well be able to answer questions there and then, but the three of us will be looking at those, and I'm going to, you know, we can keep on our video so that if there's something we'd like to just ask Mathilde straight away, we could just put up our hand and then she could get to the end of her sentence and then perhaps ask the question. Otherwise, we'll ask at the end. Is that all right, everybody? If I missed anything, fellow moderators and presenter? Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Stop share. And now, Mathilde, oh, wow, look at the speed at which that came up. We're in for a treat here. We've got a real professional here.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I hope you had a good day. So my name is Mathilde, and I will present to you today a presentation that Julien and I did a few weeks ago when we had a training day with all the languages teachers from the Harris Federation. You can see from the title that we are going to look at raising attainment at Key Stage 4, tackling the receptive skills. So we'll be looking today together at how to help our students make progress in reading and in listening. And in 2 weeks' time, on the 14th of March, Julien will be looking at something very similar, but for the productive skills, writing and speaking. So I'm really pleased to be presenting tonight, and I hope that you find some of the ideas we talk about useful. As Helen said, I would love for this webinar to be as interactive as possible. So ask questions, make suggestions. A lot of what I'm presenting are ideas that I've learned from others. So I'm hoping I will learn a lot as well this evening from you. We are going to first briefly look at what we call the fundamental skills of listening and reading together. We will also consider the barriers to success that our students face. But the biggest part of the session is to look at practical ideas that you can use in class with your students for listening and for reading. A lot of what I'm going to present today is linked to the AQA specification, because this is the example that we currently use at Paris. However, having taught previously in a school that use Edexcel, I'm confident that a lot of what we discuss and we share can be applied as well if you use a different example than AQA. So this is just a reminder of what students are expected to be able to do. They need to be able to demonstrate understanding of different types of spoken or written language. Also, we expect them to identify the overall message, the key points, the details and opinions in a variety of short and longer spoken or written passages. We know that they have to recognize the relationship between past, present, and future events, which is very important as well for reading and listening. In listening, we expect students to be able to answer questions, extract information, evaluate and draw conclusions. And in reading, we want students to be able to scan for particular information, draw inferences in context, and recognize implicit meaning where appropriate. So this is what we are told by the exam board. They also mention that students are expected to recognize and respond to key information in more extended written text, including some extracts from relevant, abridged, or adapted literary texts. And then the last part that I didn't include on the slide is that students need to be able to translate a short passage from French into English. So just a reminder of what the skills our students should develop are. Something else that I think is useful to share is so what is included in our the assessment. So I'll give you a little bit of time to read these different bullet points. And for AQA, what's interesting, if you use this example as well, is that there is a range of demand across the paper. It's not exactly like Edexcel. So having taught Edexcel before, I know that each question gets harder in the paper, in listening and reading, while for AQA, the papers are structured using a series of peaks and troughs within a steady incline of difficulty. And it's important if we are using AQA to share this information with our students in advance of the exam. They might come across a difficult question and think, I can't do it anymore. Actually, when they are not realizing that the next question will be easier in the paper. Okay, so we have challenging questions followed by easier questions later in the paper. So let's look together at barriers to success at listening and reading. I would want to know what barriers your students currently face. I will give you time to read a list of barriers that have been identified. So I'll give you a little bit of time, and then I will tell you what we are going to do with those. We've got 3 more. Right, so that's what I would like us to engage with now. I would like to know which of these barriers are the biggest barrier for your students. So I would like us to go into an MS form that I'm going to share with you. I just need to make sure I'm showing you the screen. So the 8 barriers I've just presented, let me show them to you again. I would like you to consider which one is the biggest barrier for your students, and I would like you please to rank these barriers from the most challenging, which should be the number 1, to the least challenging. I've created for this an MS form. You can either scan the QR code, or I'm going to post the link in the chat now. For you to follow the link, and I'll give you a few minutes to rank the barriers. So thinking about your Year 11 students or your Year 10 students, which of these barriers are the most challenging for them? And then we'll see what everyone is thinking. Do let me know in the chat if you are finding difficult to access this form.
Seems to be working well, and I love the design, the confetti coming down. Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's quite nice what we can do now on MS Form. Oh, I already have 2 responses. Thank you very much. Let's see. I'll give you another 10 seconds. You can see the answers on the screen.
And answer the question how you submit. If you scroll down, then you find a, oh, Sarah's done it.
Yeah, so it's okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to take a screenshot of this very briefly and go back to my presentation. So I just want to compare what people think tonight with what my colleagues were thinking a few weeks ago when we did the training. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the ranking that my colleagues did. And it's interesting because the top 3 are the same. So we do agree that a lack of precision in answers, not recognizing the distractors, basic and core items of vocabulary not being known are big barriers. And we are going to talk about them today and this evening, and how we can address them so our students improve. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in this MS form. Okay, let me put everyone's video back on. So let's start by looking at practical ideas for listening. I will share with you some of my ideas, and I would like to hear anyone who has further ideas that I've not thought about. We are going to look at 3 different listening tasks. We will start by looking at multiple choice questions. We will then look at a listening question that requires students to choose from a list. And the final question we'll be looking at is the most challenging question of the section in English, when students have to answer in English. Okay? I've used the tips that AQA have shared on their website. I've used those when planning this session because I find the posters that they have very useful. And for this specific question, multiple choice questions, I've decided to look at these tips for exam success from AQA. So maximizing the reading time and listening carefully to the whole extract. What I'm going to present today uses a sequence that is the following: prepare, answer, check, and try it again. So we are thinking here about activities to use in the classroom to teach our students how to listen. So they need preparation before they tackle a listening task. They need to be shown how to do it. So when they get to the exam, they know exactly how to do it on their own. And by providing them some support, we need to make sure that they can, once they've been shown how to do something, they can do it again on their own with less support. So that's the idea today. You will see in the top right corner that I'm trying to, you will see, sorry that I had something covering it. You will see in the top right corner that we are in the preparing phase here. So as we are teaching our students how to prepare for listening, what is important here is to show students how to read instructions carefully and how to annotate the paper. If we tell students, read the instruction, underline the keywords, annotate the papers, and we don't show them how to do it, some of our students will do it, but some of the students I teach, I know they won't be able to do it. So they need to be modeled everything. And I'm trying here to get the pen. Here we are. So I will go through it with my students, and I will, especially here because it's a task in a target language, I will show them what I mean by annotating. So underlining the word in French that we understand and then translating it. I will not do it here because I'm very slow at using the pen on the PowerPoints. But I think you get the idea of what I mean by modeling, is showing them what we mean by annotating. So I will check that they understand the words at the moment, doctor, unemployed, etc. So we have examples in French here. Once students have read the instruction, I need then to do some input of vocabulary. So I'm showing you on the next slide, not something that I will show to my students. I'm showing you on the next slide something that is important during the planning phase. So for teachers' use only. Every time I want to go through a listening activity with my students, I looked at the transcript and I'm trying to think, okay, what are my students going to struggle with? So you have the transcript here in French. And I'm wondering what you think your students here will struggle with. So you can maybe write some bits in the chat, or if you want to unmute, you can tell me, oh, I think my students in number 1 will struggle with this, in number 2 with that. Let's see if I can read anything in the chat. No, any questions in the chat about the form? Merci Julien, thank you. VFN is sans emploi, oui. Anything else before I show you my thinking? J'ai arrêté, oui. Okay, right. So I've thought about it myself when I was planning this session. So I selected j'ai arrêté, je suis sans emploi, mais je ne serai jamais pianiste professionnel, je ne serai jamais. So here are the keywords that will stop students from getting the answer right. I have to address this before my students complete the listening, otherwise they are very likely to only get everything wrong and not to make progress. So I'm selecting here the key structures that I want to go through before my students tackle the listening. It's a very simple activity that I've created for this example. I've created a matchup activity. I will show you other possible activities later on. I want students to be prepared, so I will show them exactly the phrases I've selected from the transcript, and I will ask them to read through them and find the translation in English, so they are prepared to complete the task. And I will show them the answers, of course. Now that they are prepared, they've read the instructions, we looked at the difficult vocabulary. I will make students listen and complete the activity as they would have to do it in the exam. Before correcting the answers, an important step is to show the transcript to the students and give them the time to check the answers on their own just by reading. Here, there might be something you do already, and you might already ask your students perhaps to use a different color pen, so you've just answered the question as a listening. Now, use a different color pen if you have, read the transcript and make any changes that you want. That way we can see the difference between what students understood in listening and what they understand with the transcript in front of them. And then, again, by following the transcript, going through the transcript together, and deciding what the answer is by looking at the transcript. I've been guilty many times at the beginning of my career just to give the answer to a listening task, not looking at the transcript, not trying to understand why students were getting it wrong. And I realized now that I didn't help my students in making progress. If they don't hear the words, they need to see them. They need to see them to start linking the sound with the spelling. Okay? So these are the answers again. Right. So something I should have mentioned is that everything I'm showing you this evening, so we will share it with you as a PDF, but there will also be a lesson version, which is a PowerPoint that we will share with you. Some of my colleagues who attended the presentation we did a few weeks ago used these slides and created a lesson from it. So we'll share this with you. Okay. So we are moving on to the next phase of the sequence: prepare, answer, check, and try again. So this is the try again phase. I've selected here a very similar question to the one I've just taken my students through. And this time I will tell them to do it on their own without my help. So I will give them time to read the instructions and to annotate. I will walk around the classroom and check that they are doing it as I showed them earlier. I will play the recording twice and give them the chance to look at the transcript before I give them the answers. Okay, so that's the try again phase. Are there any questions, any suggestions at this stage?
The suggestion from Cheryl that perhaps after the listening, before revealing the full transcript, you could give the transcript as a gap fill.
That's a very nice idea as well. Yes, I really like that.
Got
yes.
a couple of hearts there, so that's a good one.
Yes. And yes, definitely. Using the transcript with gaps. Absolutely.
And Julien is reinforcing what you're saying about sharing, don't hesitate to share the vocabulary from the transcripts before, even though that's not the experience they have in the exams, because that will help build resilience with the students.
Yes, absolutely.
They learn not to give up that. And in fact, Mike's in the room, I know, and we were talking about this today, weren't we, at the Buckingham hub meeting, about how listening can be the most daunting skill, and transcripts can really help, and not always treating a listening exercise in class as a test all the time.
Yes. Yes, I fully agree. And if you need to read it yourself again so that the pace is slower, please do, because what we want is really students to start associating the sound with the words. And if it sounds like a language that that is not French, if it sounds like something completely different, they will need that support. Moving on to my second example of listening. This one is about choosing from a list. And I will share with you some of the challenges that my students face, and let's see if you will have similar experiences. So here, we are using these tips from AQA: maximizing the reading time and listening carefully to the whole extract, not basing an answer on the first thing that we hear. Okay. Right. This is the question that I want my students to answer. Again, I will look at the transcript and I will have a think about what my students might get wrong. So for the first question, here, it is very likely that when my students hear what we can see on the transcript, here I'm anticipating the answer they might give me. They might hear the word enfant and think that Cindy is a new mom, or they might think that she's pregnant. They might focus on the first thing they hear, which is inconnu, but they might just hear the connu. And if they know that it's famous, they could jump to conclusion and decide that the answer is B. Looking at this next part in the transcript, I think here the only answer my students will get is newly married, because they will hear mariage or they will hear couple. So I don't think here they would necessarily get it wrong. But for the last one, I give you a little bit of time to read. And I know that not everyone is a French teacher, so the last one is a bit tricky. And now, here is Luna. She's hiding to her partner that he's going to be a dad. Are they going to separate? This is a very, very challenging part. And students will only understand partner, dad, separate. And I'm pretty sure they will go for separated, which is the wrong answer. They are unlikely to get the correct answer, which is that Luna is pregnant, because it's very difficult here to work out the correct answer from these words. So what do? I see the transcript and I know my students are going to get it wrong. So I have to do something about it. What I've decided to do is that I'm going to tell them what the answer is not. That way, it's going to force students to listen for other clues if I'm telling them that it's not E. So they will have to really be careful, and hopefully they will be able to hear more details, okay? So that's the idea here. When you look at the transcript and you see that there is something that students are going to get wrong, you know them very, very well. Tell them that it's not the answer, so you force them to listen to other things. All right. Same here, we show them the transcript for them to check the answers. We could do a gap fill. I think that would be a very good idea as well. And then we correct the answers together.
I'll just say that idea went down very well. Mike was saying, I like that idea of ruling out one answer because it was a tough question.
Yes. Okay. Anything else from the chat, Helen?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Again, once this has been done, it's good to try again so that students can apply the same skills to a similar question. I could here decide to differentiate it. If I want to give a little bit of support to maybe my less able listeners, I could tell them, do not choose B or D. But I don't have to tell everyone. So I could only tell a few students that I know will benefit from the help and not tell the rest. So that's also a way to differentiate. And again, go through the listening, show them the transcript. Do students want to change the answer when they see the transcript? And then go through it with them so that they understand exactly the reason for the correct answers and can at the same time develop their vocabulary. Right, for this one, I've decided to look at key structures that I think are challenging. So the two activities we've just looked at, I've selected the vocabulary. Elle vient de faire, ils sont sur le point de faire, notre propre pièce où dormir. So I think that this vocabulary that they used in the exam questions, this vocabulary is very difficult and they are not actually structures I go through very often at all in lesson. I do not teach my students to use it in writing, for example. Ils sont sur le point de faire. I've never taught this. Notre propre pièce où dormir. That's very challenging vocabulary. So here I'm thinking I should really use this vocabulary to develop some important skills in my students, which is to be aware that they will be paraphrasing or that we'll be using synonyms a lot in listening, but in reading as well. So knowing that this vocabulary will be challenging, so this is my planning phase here. I'm going to make my students practice this again before I move on to a different part of my lesson. Okay, so I've created another listening activity for them to find the synonyms. So I'm giving them a list of expressions to choose from, and these are the words that they've heard in the exercises earlier, but I want them to match them to a synonym expression. So let's see if you can hear this one.
No, no, we can't
No?
hear. You need to share the sound.
That's fine. So this one we're saying c'est très cher. Okay? So the recording says c'est très cher. And students have to identify which expression has the same meaning as what they've heard. C'est très cher. So here I give you a little bit of time to read the list. So they are familiar with c'est très cher, but what is the expression that is synonym? So that would be le coût est affreux, the cost is awful, etc. So de bons restaurants, what is the synonym? Des restaurants réputés. So I really want here to reinforce the vocabulary, because if I just, okay, move on with the lesson, I'm missing an opportunity to develop my students' vocabulary. So here I'm making my students link what they know, the vocabulary that they know, to what they just heard. Okay? I'm going to share with you the last listening activity, which is answering in English. And often we find that students lack precision in the answer, or sometimes they don't give enough details, or sometimes they give too many details. So let's look at how we can help our students improve. I have selected this question, living in Switzerland. And again, when I was planning this session, I was thinking, the number of times I've had to ask my students, why do you think this question is about people who live in Switzerland? Or why do you think it's about people who live in Congo? Why do you think it's about people who live in Senegal or in Canada? Not all of the students I've taught in the past know that these countries are French-speaking countries. So I think whenever we can use a listening activity as an opportunity to develop our students' cultural capital. So here, before I go through the listening, I'm going to actually take an opportunity to show my students important things that they should know about Switzerland. So it's called La Suisse. This is where it's situated in Europe, so they can try to picture a little bit where the country is. I will show them some famous people from that country. I also want to show them pictures of the country, and there is a reason for this. A few years ago, I had an excellent student in my year 11 class. She was very, very good. She got a very good result in her GCSE and carried on with French at A level. But she had never been to Switzerland. So when there was a question in the listening activity we did together, it was in one of our mock exams, actually, a question about the weather in Switzerland. She didn't know that the answer was likely to be that it's cold in winter or that it snows in winter. She didn't know that. Her answer didn't make sense. So that's another reason why we should always take an opportunity to build on our students' cultural capital. So here I want as well to share with my students what Switzerland is famous for. So chocolate, cheese, watches, and an important fact is that we speak several languages in Switzerland as well. So a listening activity can be a nice opportunity to build our students' cultural capital and to make them think about other things that just the word, just the vocab that they have to learn, the real life examples. Okay, so listening carefully to the whole extract. Don't base your answers on the first thing you hear is the top tip here that we want to share with students. And the other one is to only give one detail if they are asked for one detail. Okay, so students complete the activity. We check the answers together. And here, what I've decided to do with my students is actually to give them an answer to mark. I want them to realize a little bit, I want them to realize how complex the masking can be sometimes, because when they see it, they are going to become more aware of the precision that they need in the answers. So I've given them here an answer from a student that could be, they've understood quite a lot from that listening activity, but perhaps they haven't been precise enough, and I want students to see that when they are marking the work. So why did this person choose to live in Switzerland? Give one reason. The languages and chocolate. So here again, I want my students to become aware that we only need one reason, we've got two. But it's not precise enough because we wanted to hear many languages or chocolate is sold everywhere. So by marking the work of another student, my students will become aware of the mistakes that can be done and how not to make the same mistake in their own answers, if that makes sense. So here we only need one. This is not correct. So there was increase, but not in unemployment, part-time work. This is not precise enough. And here it is incorrect. Okay, so making them aware of the precision needed in the mark scheme. And then again, giving them a chance to have another go at a similar activity. Okay? Okay, before we move on to reading, I'm going to check the time. We are doing very well. I wonder if you have access to Exam Pro, and I wonder if you've ever used Exam Pro to set listening homework. This is something I've learned this year. I saw one of my colleagues setting homework for their classes using that way from Exam Pro. So on Exam Pro, you have the possibility to export questions as a Word document or as a PDF, but you also have the opportunity to share links. So this is what it looks like. So you need to save your documents. You need to give it a name, okay? And once you've given it a name, you will have a link and a QR code that you can share with anyone. And when you click on the link or when you scan the QR code, you will get access to the task and the recording. Okay, so this, if I go back a little bit, because I've missed one step, so you need to decide that you want to share the question and the resources for the listening, otherwise the listening file will not be there. So question and listening, you get a QR code that you can share. You can try right now to scan the QR code and you will see where it takes you. On your phone, these are screenshots of my phone, so that's what a student will see. They will see the task, then they can listen to it and complete their homework at home. You can choose as well to add the mark scheme if you wish to. So this is not auto-marked, but it's a very easy way to share listening activities with your students. And I know that the more students will get the experience to listen and to complete exam tasks, the better they will be. Okay? Okay, I'm going to check the chat before we look at the reading part. Yes, I think Exam Pro is really, really good. I can see a lot of people agree with this. Nice, Mike. Excellent. Okay. Looking at reading. I just have a sip of water. Okay. So reading. I think this is my favorite section. You will find out a little bit later why. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at reading comprehension in English, because looking at this reading rope is very, very useful. It's making us think about everything we teach our students. So I'll give a little bit of time for you to have a look at this picture before I speak. So the reading rope helps to remind us the many different threads that are essential to develop our pupils as skilled readers at all key stages. Tending carefully to each thread in the rope matters if we are to weave a strong reading rope in every classroom. This is good for us to bear this in mind. So we need our students to know vocabulary. We need our students to know grammar. We need our students to know phonics so that when they hear, especially in French, when they hear something, the knowledge of phonics help them work out how the word is spelled. Because sometimes they know a word, the way it's spelled, but when they hear it, they don't know it, or the other way around. They will know it when you say it, but then when they read it, they won't be able to work out what the word is. So all of this is really, really important. We are going to look at 3 different reading activities. The first one is positive, negative, or both. The second reading activity we'll be looking at is how to teach our students to work out meanings from the context. And finally, we will be looking at translation into English. Some tips from exam success on the screen before we look at a specific exam question. That's an interesting question. Parental control software. Here, I want students to understand that there are different levels of reading. So the first read, obviously, I want them to, if I go back a little bit, I want them to read the introduction to the question carefully. So I would display this on the screen without the French text. I will give them time to read, and I will question them. What do we know already about the text just by reading the introduction? And then the different level of reading that I was about to explain. So the first level is reading for gist or skimming, where I will show my students that they don't need to understand everything. All I want is them to skim and see what they understand. So I've done it here. I'm thinking about my students, so they will understand that installation is not simple. That word that we don't know, logiciel, be used, parents, desire, control, children. So here I'm really showing them, this is what I think you understand, okay? And that's the first level of reading. Just read for gist, skim through the text, and so you get an idea of what the text is about. And then I will pause and I will tell them, what is that word, logiciel, that keeps coming back? What do we think that means? We may not have learned it in class, but how can we still work it out? Obviously here my coloring on the screen will help, but the word that keeps coming back is actually in the question and in the instruction. So it's really powerful to make students realize sometimes you don't understand a word, but look back at the question. It's telling you what it is about. And when I delivered this training, I had a colleague who made a very good point. And here she said to us, I think that before I actually start to read for gist, I would have a discussion with my class about what the parental control software is about. So just making sure that it's clear in their mind what it is used for, the pros and cons, having a discussion with the class in English. I thought it was important to mention it here. So that's the first level of reading. And I can already start asking my students, so do you think that for Gabrielle, if the installation is not simple and there is a desire to control children, do you think the answer is going to be positive or negative? What's your first impression? Okay? And then we can do this for all of them. The next level of reading is a second read, so scanning. So I want my students to scan to see if the first impression is the correct one. So for Gabrielle, the first impression was that it was negative because we said not simple, desire to control their children. So I want you to scan and see if there is anything that could be positive, okay? Because you don't want to miss out that it's a positive and a negative. And I will ask my students to scan the text and I will do it with them. I will model this with them. So here, plutôt que de les aider. Okay, there is to help. Is that positive or not? And I will probably need, if my students can't remember, I will need to translate plutôt que rather than, and make sure that it's something that we revisit in the next few lessons, so that the words stick, plutôt que, if they didn't know it, etc. Right. We go through the answers together at the class. And once we've done this, I will give my students a chance to complete a very similar task on their own. I will want to see them annotate for the first reading, for the skimming. And then I will want them to check their answers by scanning for extra information. This vocabulary, I've looked at a lot of past paper questions, and I've noticed that in reading, this vocabulary comes back quite a lot in this type of answers that are positive, negative, or both. So I would want to use this slide regularly and check that my students remember whether c'est vrai is introducing something positive or something negative. So I will go through it with them. C'est vrai, c'est faux, comes back quite a lot. Je suis d'accord, je ne suis pas d'accord, je pense qu'ils ont raison, etc. Alors, so it's difficult. Is that going to be positive or negative? There are some words that we need to be mindful of. And then again, par contre, mais cependant, malgré, bien que, they have to watch out. It could be that the first idea is positive and the next one is negative. It's often the case, but they have to look at what comes before and what comes after. C'est dommage, c'est inadmissible. There are less known adjectives, but they come up in many questions. J'ai horreur de, rien de spécial, nothing special. So these are, this is vocabulary that I've spotted in many different questions. Is there anything you would add to this list in terms of key vocabulary that our students need to answer this type of question? Have I missed anything obvious? I think I have. Tell me. I'm looking at the chat. Is there key vocabulary that you ensure your students know well? En revanche, yes, I knew that was missing. Thank you. I'll add this one straight away. What else? Ce n'est pas le cas. Yes. Okay. So, yes, thank you. I couldn't remember it. So these are, my colleagues told me about SOF when I delivered the training. I forgot to add it. Recently, in a speaking exam, I had à part.
Ah, I was about to write that.
No one got it right. À part. À part le sport, qu'est-ce que tu fais? They all talk about sports. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to the second reading activity. This one is to help our students realize that they are able to work out the meaning of unknown vocabulary from context, that using what they know, they are able to really work out the meaning of new words. Okay? How? By reading the whole sentence to get all the relevant information. I'm going to share with you a reading activity that I stole from David Shanks, who is our colleague at Harris. So I used a training that he delivered when I was a teacher in a high school a few years ago. And I've created an activity around this, so I'm going to share it with you. So this is a text about Dado, who goes to school in Senegal. And here the tips for exam success that we are looking at is the importance of reading the whole sentence to get all the relevant information. I've delivered this lesson several times in the past, and I'm showing you the exam question first, but this is not how I had started my lesson. I had started my lesson with a do know activity where I was asking my students to read this list of words and without any help, translate for them to translate as many words as they could in English. So this is the list. All these words are taken from the text that they are about to read. And it was a checkpoint for me to see what students knew before reading the text. Obviously, in this activity, the words are taken out of context, so it's impossible for students to use the context to work out the meaning of new words. I'm then giving them this text where I've translated the text in English, apart from the keywords. My aim is to show students that when they see a new word like banlieue, that many would not have seen before, they can work out what the word means by using their prior knowledge and a little bit of common sense. Okay, she lives in the, so students will tell me, in the center of Dhaka. I will tell them, but you know how to say the center of Dhaka, and you know it's not that word. What else could it be? And they will get there by thinking, they will get the outskirts or the suburb, they will work it out. Like a lot of Senegalese, okay, they will work out the Senegalese people. Dado speaks French, sorry. Chez elle, so they might know chez moi. So here they might be able to work out as well using the rest of the sentence. Okay. A lot of students are able to translate the whole list or 80% of the whole list by using the context. And this type of activity really builds students' confidence. They can work out the meaning of words they've never seen. And they didn't think they could do it. So, but showing them that they can do it really builds their confidence. Once we've worked on the vocabulary, students can confidently answer the exam question. When I delivered this lesson, I also tried to differentiate the task because here we have statements in English for students to choose from, but I created a different activity that I will show you in a minute. There is something else on that screen, on that slide, sorry, that I want to show you, is making it very visual that the answers are in the order of the text. So Dado lives in the center of Dhaka. At the beginning of the text, we have a sentence that says where she lives. So it's about deciding whether it's true or false. She speaks more than one language. That would be in the next part of the text. So making it very visual for students to see how most of the time the questions in an exam follow the order of the text. And some students, just by hearing you saying it, the questions are in the order of the text, will get it. Other students will need to see it, and that visual could help. Okay? Right, so what I'm showing you is questions on the next slide now, questions that I created to make this task a little bit more challenging for my top students, for my more able linguists, where the questions were in French rather than in English, okay? But that was a multiple choice in French. So that's another idea you can perhaps use, or you use already, having the same text, but a different task. So when you teach mixed tier class, that can be quite useful. Right. Let me move this away so I can see. Yes. Okay, it can be used it can be used either as a differentiated task, or here, as you can see, a further task to reinforce vocabulary. Once all students have answered this question, can they answer a different question but on the same text? Okay, so to reinforce the vocabulary. And then to take it even further, how are we doing with time? Oh, we've got 2 minutes. Sorry about that. Then making it maybe relevant to them, where you want them to engage with the words that they've just translated earlier in the lesson. Can they, so here I've written sentences that are relevant to my students, for example. can they work out which word is missing in the gap? So mon ami, my friend lives in Spain. I go every year in July. So what is missing here? Okay, so to reinforce the vocabulary. So I'm aware of time now, 2 minutes left.
Speak as long as you like and as slowly as you like. There is no problem at all.
Okay.
We'll understand if people need to go. What you're doing is so valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much. Again, showing them a similar activity to the one we've just done, where I want them, without my help, to work out the meaning of these keywords and then to answer an exam question. Okay. Right. The last reading activity I wanted to present tonight is a translator. And I have a few questions here. So I will open the chat so I can see it. How long is the reading higher paper and how long is the reading foundation paper? Do you know the number of minutes and the number of marks? So let's see in the chat. Let's start with higher. How many minutes and how many marks? It's very exam focused tonight. Yes, 60 minutes, 60 marks. So it's really easy. Thank you, everyone in the chat. It's very easy for higher. In terms of telling students how to use their time, they should spend 1 minute per mark. So if an exercise is out of 5 marks, they should spend 5 minutes. Now, obviously, where I'm going is I'm going to talk about the translation. So how many marks is the translation? And therefore, how many minutes? Yes, 9 marks. Do your students know that they should spend at least 9 minutes on the translation? I wonder if they do. And because it's the last question in the paper, I wonder if students spend enough time on it, or maybe they rush through it. It's a good question. So in terms of for the foundation paper, it's the same number of marks. Or you tell them to start with it. And that's something I've recommended my students in the past to do as well. I agree with you. It's so many marks. Why are you keeping it for the end? Just to talk about the timings for the foundation paper. The foundation paper being 45 minutes, I will tell you roughly how many minutes I've calculated students should spend on each section. So I will start with translation. They should spend about 7 minutes on the translation at foundation. Section A is 33 marks. So students should spend about 25 minutes at foundation, 25 minutes. For section A, where the questions and answer are in English, and for section B, questions and answer in French, 13 minutes, 1-3. Okay, so for foundation, 25, 13, and 7. And here, what's really important in terms of tips that we want to share with students is they are the following. And we talked about times. That's why leaving yourself enough time to complete the translation is important. Not giving up if something is difficult, and checking the translation carefully to make sure that nothing is missed out. I've looked at what AQA has told us about this translation from November 2020. And based on the common mistakes, I've written what could have been a very a common answer. So here, students often were forgetting the word souvent. So I argue with my parents, but they were forgetting the word souvent because of my friends who, and then selon was not translated very well. So I will not, it's a little bit late and I'm starting to have a little bit of a foggy brain. So I will not go through this one by one, but you will see when you get the PDF that all my mistakes that I'm showing you here are based on the common mistakes that AQA identified, okay? So what I want to share before we end are what I've identified by looking at all the translation that AQA have given our students in the reading paper, okay? So AQA say that translation can expose a lack of knowledge of time frames, negatives, articles, adverbs, pronouns, and possessive adjectives and connectives. So that's what they say. So by looking at past paper questions, I can see that often the translation requires students to translate other pronouns than je. So je, they can do it, but other pronouns than je will be more challenging. So are students prepared for that? Mostly for the foundation, third person singular. Elles, sont, ils, ce, and on. Can our students translate these pronouns or possessive adjectives? Also, I've seen the second person singular where it was kind of a letter written that students had to translate with questions. Tu aimes faire ça? Qu'est-ce que tu en penses? And I've seen this once, and it was a bit difficult as well for students to translate. In the translation of the reading paper at Foundation, there is a lot of the time I've seen use of direct object pronouns that are very difficult to translate for students if they have not practiced it. So that's something we need to practice with our students. And in terms of tenses, the perfect tense is often used as well as the near future in the same translation. I've seen the conditional and the past being used. I've seen the past and the near future being used. Okay. The past tense, the perfect tense used, often they are ER verbs, so they are easy to spot, easier than other verbs at Foundation. For higher, it's a bit different. Obviously, we want it to be more challenging, so it's more the second person plural that is used, the vous, the vos, or the third person plural, il, eux, leur, so more challenging for our students. There are a lot of subordinate clauses that students need to translate, either introduced by qui, ce que, or ce qui. They have more tenses. So in one translation, I saw the past tense with the simple future, or past tense and conditional, and they use question, but the word order is different. So instead of est-ce que tu penses, I've seen things like penses-tu que, or where we have the inversion of the subject with the verb, and that's difficult for students to translate. They are not used to it. Right, this presentation is coming to an end, so thank you very much for your attention. Before we finish, I would just want to find out something from you. So when you have your students sitting mock exam and the real exam, do they do the listening before the reading? Or do they do the reading first? So what is the experience that your students have? Reading first? Listening then reading? Okay. Listening then reading. Okay. I know that most schools do the listening before the reading. However, we have found that starting with the reading paper can really, really help our students, especially our weaker students, because the listening, which is very challenging, especially for the French students, if students start with the listening, this could have a negative impact on the performance in reading. The reading as well is often a good warm-up before the listening. Okay. We want to tackle the lack of resilience. So if students start with the reading, it's the first exam, and then when they move on to the listening, they have anyway, the nature of the exam is they have to follow to the recording, so they are less likely to disengage. And also it gives us more time to make sure that the audio is working and everything is going to work very smoothly for students. So if you have the opportunity to try to do the reading first for a mock exam before the real exam, do the reading first, ask your students how they find the experience, see if your results are better, and perhaps that's a good solution. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope that you found this presentation useful. Please do use the chat if there are any other ideas that you would like to share about how to help our students improve in reading and listening, and have a very good night. and a good rest of the week.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant. And if you look now at the chat, you could see everybody there saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I think people really have been just so fixed to what you've been saying. It's been packed with ideas that people haven't necessarily had time to be able to write during. I'm sure I could see Sarah writing notes as we were going along as well. It was fantastic. And really, I would say thank you so much as well. As I said at the beginning, it's great that as a federation, the Harris Federation, that you're prepared to share this with us. You've put so much thought into that. There are brilliant ideas. It tends to be that old people like me will say, yeah, we've done this before. There were so many ideas there. I thought, I almost made me wish I was back in the classroom again, you know, but it was just really, really good. And I am actually helping in a couple of schools. So I tell you, I'm going to be taking those straight to those schools. Some lovely ideas. And really just to say, I thought that was particularly good that you think at this time I would often use it as a, right, now we're going to test you. I've been teaching you all of these months. Now let's test. And yes, I'd go over it in detail afterwards. But the way that you're using this as a form of revision and making it positive is just superb. Really, really good. Lovely ideas there. And that last question about listening and reading, I think, why haven't I thought of that before? That really does make sense, doesn't it? And you could see the reactions there. So thank you ever so much. That was really good. We'll be keeping the chat. There have been some people asking about the Spanish equivalent. Julien, you were talking about that. Do you want to say something?
Yes, we have a version available for Spanish, so we'll make that available at the same time. So you'll probably have it tomorrow with you, Helen, and then you'll be able to share it. But absolutely, we've got an equivalent.
Absolutely brilliant. Sarah, would you like to say anything? Okay. Sarah's been helping out on the moderation as well. So amazing ideas. Merci bien. Thank you. Thank you, super ideas. And I know that people will be watching this later on and also benefiting from it. Can I just ask a question? At the moment, I think quite a lot of people have come towards the end of their, hopefully the teaching, and they're getting ready for doing this. Is this though something that you would recommend doing earlier in the course, that really when you're teaching a topic, you'll then look at something, because you were saying about using vocab express, or do you leave this until the end?
I would recommend for teachers to use this type of task from year 10 or even earlier. It doesn't have to be an exam question, because it's the thinking behind. So the sequence: prepare, answer, check, try again. I think that sequence can be used even at Key Stage 3 when we want to develop some listening and reading strategies with our students. I would say we talk about it now because we have some students who really need exam practice, but the earlier student gets used to it, perhaps the better.
Mm-hmm.
I would echo that. I think, often we see a lot of practice of the skills in the classroom, but I'm finding more and more the more important is probably selecting less tasks, but really doing them well and building up around them the preparation and warm up to them and the deconstruction of them afterwards, and using all that language, because there is really no or very little progress you can make by just doing a lot of succession of reading and listening. Students are just going to get more and more demotivating, because those tasks are really difficult. Have language that, I think Mathilde, her selection today was brilliant, because there are tasks where you do wonder where did they get these ideas of using this language, and that's why I think less of them but more tasks around them will make the students less demotivated, more interested in the task maybe, and build more resilience. But also it's economical for our own planning.
Yes, I was about to say. And when we talked earlier about using the transcript but removing some words, so that we have the same activity being used in different ways, it really helps as well. Students memorizing some of the structure, some of the vocab. Yeah.
Really, really helpful. And it's certainly, at the moment I'm going along into a couple of schools, I was just thinking, what would I do? And I think having said before, they've got to learn, got to be, you know, the experience of sitting down for that length of time and doing the reading. Actually, no, but at this stage, it's better to be, as you say, making them feel positive about something, and they'll be carrying on learning things as well. So, oh, just brilliant session. Thank you ever so much. Really, really good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for giving up your evening like this. And we're really looking forward to your session next week. It is next week, isn't it, Julian? Next Thursday
It
week.
is. Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Lovely. I'm going to stop the recording now. I always say that, and then I look for where is it I stop the recording? And it is here somewhere. Stop the live stream, stop the recording. Are you sure?